Welcome to the Essence of Homeschooling podcast, brought to you by the umbrella school, Start Academy. We empower and equip you to cultivate the authentic homeschool lifestyle where freedom and relationships rule.
Kim and I are here this week to define accommodations and modifications. We're going to break this into two podcasts because there's so much material. And we'll start with accommodations, and then we'll have another podcast about modifications. I think this one's actually quite fun because I believe it's the true essence of homeschooling, where we get to see each child for who they are, how they are designed, and how they're internally wired. Nobody works the same way, learns the same way, or proves what they've learned in the same way. This is the beauty of homeschooling, that it's all about your child, who they are, and how they are made. So when we talk about accommodations and modifications, it's never negating the beauty, the value, and worth of each child. In fact, it is celebrating the wonderful uniqueness of your child.
Yes,
Kim,
and meaning for each child individually. Really, like we were saying a little bit earlier, the essence of homeschooling.
I love it. So this is a fun one. Kim and I are going to have a lot of fun doing this. Do you want to define accommodations and modifications?
I'll be glad to. So accommodations are how the student learns the material, and it takes into consideration the physical, any limitations, internally wired limitations that each child has. So it could be, accommodations could be anything like wheelchairs, for example, audio or visual support, things like sign language or braille, to be more specific, or more general things that we'll talk about in just a minute. And then modifications are a little bit different. They are what the student learns and how they show what they know. So modifications do impact the curriculum and expectations. The kids are not expected to learn the same exact material as their peers. So just to sum up, accommodations are adjustments for how they learn, while modifications change what a child learns and how they show that.
Beautiful. We picked up some information from a website, understood.org, that we will link to in the show notes with ideas for how classrooms have accommodated for students who learn differently, because we won't be able to cover everything here, though we will touch base on ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, and a variety of different things like that. But we just can't cover it all. We think you may be encouraged by reading some of the classroom accommodations that have helped in the public school, private school setting. But again, as far as homeschooling, it's beautiful because you know your child. You get to accommodate their style of learning to teach them in a way that they can comprehend. And that's not bad. That
Right.
is part of the beauty of raising children, and also the beauty of seeing the world through children's eyes. Remember when they were toddlers and learning how to walk? Did we get mad at any of our children that walked earlier or later than the other kids in the family? No, but those were such fun times watching them learn to walk, and we didn't yell at them when they didn't know how to walk. It was actually a delightful time to watch them. This is the same thing with accommodations. With a child who wasn't walking early, sometimes you gave them a little walker so that they could walk. These are just those type of things that you're doing, accommodating their natural bent, their natural style, their internal makeup, and their abilities. We all have different abilities. So the accommodations are a beautiful way to encourage their abilities in a way that is specifically for them. Again, it's homeschooling. It's your own individual education plan. Enjoy your child and make learning a fun experience that pulls out the beauty and the depth of who they are in a way that a classroom cannot.
And having come from the classroom, I can tell you, as much as I wanted to really make specific accommodations that were like big deals for all of my kids. I would have loved to have done that, but realistically, I'm one person, and I did the best I could. One year, I had a class that a third of my kids, literally one third of my classroom, needed some accommodations and or modifications, and so that was pretty intense. I really had to adjust my own expectations. But all that to say that and I'm using air quotes here, we're allowed as homeschool parents to do these same kinds of things. It's not cheating. It's a perfectly legitimate option that we have to fine tune to our own children's education. They do it in public and private schools, classrooms like that. Like you said, IEPs. And so this is perfectly fine. So specifically about accommodations, let's just dive into that. These are applied for those who are able to stay on grade level, but they just need a little tweaking for how they learn the material. So they have all the same expectations and the required work. It's just a little bit adjusted so they can understand it better. It's that input output thing that we've been talking about. So with input, there are a lot of different things you can do differently to make this easier on your kids and where they're actually learning, because that's the goal, right? You want them to learn and to enjoy learning and know how to learn. So these are good things that we can do. On that input side, a lot of times we can just simply have conversations, especially the lower grades, which is what we're talking about today. You can sit and in the car, you can talk about things just at bedtime, at the dinner table. You can have the best time just chatting over things. And you're not quizzing your kids. I'm not saying like that, although sometimes you might. You can just do it very organically as you just live your lives together. As you're talking about maybe your family history, where, back in the past, 100 years ago, where did your family live? Let's talk about that country. Oh, did you know? What did you find out? Talking things through. We could talk about examples all day long for that. But that's one.
And a big, yeah, and a big thing with the conversations is remember to approach it with curiosity,
Yeah.
because you're trying to understand what your child does know. How did they grasp the material? What went over their heads? What were they paying attention to? And it also, those conversations show you what they really zeroed in on and what was important to them, which then can help form how you move forward in the rest of your curriculum. Whether you do a unit study on a certain thing because they were so excited about one aspect. So those conversations, plus you're building the relationship with your child. And relationship is so important in your homeschool because that's what you're building especially in these early years through elementary school, that foundation of them trusting you to have fun in education, to teach them the things they need to know, even sometimes when they don't want to know them, but teaching them the basic skills to go on. And these conversations are just natural outgrowths of how you can understand your child. And then it will help you know how to teach them and what curriculum works best for them.
Right. And stories work well in that whole idea as well. Let me tell you the story of your great grandfather. And you're working your way into that. So stories are huge. And as you're talking about this story, what you can weave in, this is the input piece, you can weave in like literary analysis. What do you think was the idea of that story? What was the point? Oh, I thought it was this. Oh, I thought it was that. Why did you think that? So you can do things like that.
And that goes along with the read aloud to them.
Yes.
You create a common language when you're reading the same book, when you're enjoying the same book. And then back to the conversation, if you want to see how much they understood, have the working parent who came home after sit at the table and ask them, so what did you read today? What did you hear today? And then they'll be excited because someone else is interested. So those are fun ways to do it. But story is great. I love stories.
Definitely. It's just timeless method of sharing information. The other ways that you can have fun with input and mix it up is by playing games with your kids. We've done quite a bit of that. If they're not necessarily understanding how to tell time, we posted yesterday in one of our Facebook groups about a game that you can play to learn how to tell time. You roll the dice, and this number means you move 5 minutes forward. That number means you move their clock 5 minutes backward. So they're playing a game to see who can get from noon to 1 o'clock first. And they don't realize, oh, I'm absorbing this abstract concept of telling time on an analog clock. So that's one way you can do it. We talk about it, or taking cards from just playing cards or something, or an Uno deck or something, and you play war and you decide the rules ahead of time. The numbers that you lay down, are they going to add to this or be greater or less than? And so games are a good way to get that input where they're learning, but they think they're just playing a game.
And like you said, you really only need dice and a deck of cards, especially for math. And you can change up decks of cards if you need to. A game with writing is a little different. Maybe not with cards, but I had kids pull out parts of speech, and then they had to turn it into a sentence that made sense. Or sometimes they became silly sentences. And then I would play with writing with it. We would do our silly sentence stories. That's a mouthful. Where they would pull out a prepositional phrase, a noun, a verb, an adjective, and then form up a sentence and then write a story about it. And we still have some of the funniest stories collected because of the time together sitting down to write.
Oh, that's fun.
And I even had to do it.
Which is great. That's good modeling. Very good modeling. Yeah. And we're bouncing between input and output here, but it's all kind of a piece of the big pie. And yeah, so again, let's see, checking my list here. We've got field trips as another idea. They may glaze over if they're reading a book or something, but if you actually go to a place, that sparks that curiosity. What was this doing there? What was that door used for? What's inside here? I'm thinking Bent's Old Fort or whatever. Lots of places you can go in Colorado or whatever state you're in. Go do those field trips, or the zoo obviously is a big one.
Or the hikes too, because you can teach nature and survival, and there's so much to do. Plus, you're having conversations the whole time.
Go camping. You're on a camping trip and you're doing this fun stuff. It's all good. Also, with input, you can break big projects down into smaller steps. This is huge. I do it for myself all the time. That's how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. When I've worked with kids, my own, in fact, where they just like panic, their eyes get that deer in the headlights look. I have to write a paper. What? No, today you're only going to think about what do you want to write about? Or maybe you do some research, or you're going to think about your thesis statement. That's for older kids. You break it down into smaller steps, and that's definitely a legitimate accommodation.
And through that, you're teaching them organizational skills of there can be a method and an organizational way to break down a project, so that they start to learn that they can implement that as they get older for themselves. Then it's things like, here, this is your math, this is your language arts, this is your science, and separate them so they know what they need for each subject, even though there are times that they overlap, and they should, especially in conversations, overlap, seeing the interconnectedness of learning. But you're teaching them how to handle what's coming in so that they can keep it in a place that they can get back to.
And we like to call it executive functioning, and working on that. So it's like you have this mental desktop, and where am I going to put things on my desktop? I know my books are here, my pencils are there, and that's of course imaginary, but it's just an analogy there. But teaching them how to use a planner, whatever that looks like, paper or online or a calendar or something, and slowly teaching them those executive functioning skills, that will definitely help them be more organized and move forward more easily.
Let's maybe hit some specific examples. The physical disabilities are somewhat the easiest as far as how to help what we do as accommodations, right?
Right.
Glasses actually are an accommodation.
Mhm.
But you know what? Nobody's better than another person because they do or don't wear glasses. Help your kids if they need larger accommodations than that. Say if they have struggle with a learning disability, which nobody can see, right? People can see that you need glasses or you need hearing aids or you're in a wheelchair. Those physical disabilities are external and sometimes give people a lot more grace for one another. It's those ones that we struggle with on the internal that seem more mental blocks or internal physical sensory blocks that we have problems with. But the physical disabilities, it's easy. We understand those. Those are also great examples to help your kid when they're like, oh, this is wrong with me. I don't process words the way other people do. All right, not everybody walks the same. Not everybody sees the same. So they need glasses or hearing aids or those. Big deal. You're beautifully made the way you are with some of the physical disabilities, but also with the processing and dyslexia, you, just you can allot more time. That's an accommodation. We do that naturally within homeschooling. For others, certainly if they're struggling with their vision, record lessons so that they can hear it. Instead of them taking notes, they get to record the lesson. And or have it so it's more visual for somebody who is more hard of hearing. They need it written down or clearly spoken directions for those with vision impairment. Those are things we understand better, the physical disabilities, and we're more willing to accommodate for that, realizing that the student isn't less than. Even though I know kids who with physical disabilities still feel like they're not as valuable, the beauty of homeschooling is you're helping them understand their value as beautiful, as worthy, and it's just different from others. But one of my sayings is different isn't wrong, it's just different.
Okay. Yep.
Welcome to Start Academy. We are an umbrella school that fulfills legal reporting requirements for homeschoolers in Colorado. But all of our services like transcripts, diplomas, IDs, and coaching are available no matter where you live. Don't forget to check out our store for homeschool essentials like attendance logs, planners, report cards, and DIY high school transcripts. Whether you need help with paperwork, planning, support, or guidance on your homeschool journey, Start Academy is here to support you. Visit theumbrellaschool.com to learn more.
So that's on the physical disabilities. Do you have anything to add to that, Kim?
No, I don't think so. Off the top of my head, we may come back to it though.
We may. Never
Yeah.
know.
So
Okay.
then, of course, you hear many examples these days of different forms of dyslexia, and that I say different forms because it does look different for different kids. And if you have a kiddo that you think may be dyslexic, you could get some testing for that. I also highly recommend checking into vision therapy. Vision therapy is not whether or not, obviously, get their eyes checked too. That's as far as can they see 20/20 or whatever, like you said, needing glasses or not. But vision therapy is a little bit different. It has to do with how the brain and the eyes connect. And we're talking about things like maybe they just aren't tracking well. Tracking is a big word in that. So that might look to them as if the lines or the words or the letters are overlapping or they're wiggly. And so there are exercises that a vision therapist can have your child do to help strengthen their eyes. And you can learn about those. You can go online and learn about that. Sometimes it can be covered by insurance. So it's definitely something worth checking into. But in the
And we
meantime-
used
ahead.
some of that. My son's issue with dyslexia was the words would fall off the page.
Isn't that
And
interesting?
yeah, but it was so funny because he was talking about, we only found out from one of the daughters later. She's that's so cool. Something must be wrong with me that the words aren't falling off the page for me.
Mhm.
So, how it's all perspective with how you deal with differences, right? But yes, that vision therapy. And like you said, you can learn some of them. So, you just incorporate it before you start reading projects as you do some of the connectivity between your eyes and your brain.
Wow, that's good. You have personal experience with that. What else did you do?
Oh, audiobooks.
Yeah.
Audiobooks like crazy. Thankfully, he was an auditory learner, so that really helped. Audiobooks, he could listen to them while he played with Legos, and it was incredible how much he could grasp. And sometimes I'm like, "No, you need to read with the book." But even now, I'll bring up a book that he's in his 20s now. I'll bring up a book and he can remember. He's, oh, that's the one about this and this. His memory is very good. He's very smart. Dyslexia is certainly not anything about intellect. It's just, again, a different learner. But
No,
audiobooks were, there were, pardon?
it all stuck with him. That's good. The
It,
audio.
it did. There were times then when he would have to look at the book so he could at least be practicing with the words.
Mm.
We also did narration for him so that granted that's an output type of thing instead of an input type of thing, but we had him narrate instead of write because the act of writing, the manual function of writing is very different than the intellectual ability of organization in your brain. But for math, there was a season where I wrote one or two problems on a page and then he could crinkle them up and throw them off once he finished because it felt satisfying. Instead, because in dyslexia, a lot of times the eyes don't know where they should be. And so science textbooks were very hard because you didn't know if you look at the graph, at the words, at the pictures, and it's not straight lines. It's graph the thing here and then a photo over here, and then there's words under the photograph, and you're like, what do I do? So sometimes we would take a piece of paper and cover things, or two pieces of paper so that we covered things on the side and covered things on the bottom. And then we started three, cover things on the top because we're moving down the page. Things like that, hiding the unnecessary text so
Sure.
that their brain, their eyes can focus where they need to focus instead of there's too much. It's almost like sensory overload for the eyes.
Did you ever use the little trick of taking a piece of lined notebook paper, turning it sideways for the math problems, and using then the vertical lines to write the problem, like
We would use graph paper.
graph paper
Yeah.
too? Yeah.
And you can do that or use graph paper so they make sure that they're all in the same
Mhm.
spot. Yeah. Because aligning your problem matters. You better make sure the ones are lined up and the tenths, you don't put your one over with your 10. You have to use
All
your
the
zeros, right? There's so much
Yeah.
with that kind of stuff. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of ways to help them get, and again, it's sometimes breaking it up into smaller chunks. Sometimes with this dyslexia, just 10 minutes of reading, 5 minutes of reading, and build up their stamina to it.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
and this particular kid, I can't remember if he really started reading for fun between 6th and 7th grade or actually between 7th and 8th grade. And one day I was like, where's my child? He's been hiding in his room all day, buried in books, and not just the easy books. He like started with the Cimmerillion by Tolkien. Well, that's like a big leap there, buddy. And the comprehension of it, he was talking to adults about it. And they were like, I think he got more than I did. I know. And just because they're slow in the beginning does not mean they're going to stay that way. It's
Mhm.
like our analogy of a child walking. I had one kid who walked at 9 months, friends' kids who walked closer to 2 years. They're not no smarter now, right? They're no better now. No one asked them, when did you learn to walk? Um,
Right?
And
Yeah.
that's pretty much the same when we're adults. No one says, "When did you learn to read?" It's ridiculous. So let's make reading fun and a desired thing. No shame with how long it takes.
Totally agree. And there's a school of thought that just in general that don't worry about it right now. Just enjoy the storytelling, the reading books together, the reading out loud. Some people do that. Some kids really don't learn to read until they're closer to 10 years old or so. So don't
Mhm.
panic right off the bat. But again, that's a different school of thought. Think about it, see if it works for your family. But I think my main point is don't stress and just trust the process here. And
Mhm.
it's okay to make those accommodations.
Yes. And then for kids with ADD or ADHD, you may really have to have smaller increments of working time. That maybe they do half page of problems and then they get to run around the dining room table or jump on a trampoline or something that gets the energy out.
Really good ideas. And sometimes even scheduling those things. I know I've heard you say before, Michelle, you set a timer maybe and
Mhm.
say, for the next 10 minutes, here's where we're going to focus. And then they know there's a beginning and an end. They can, if they need to, glance over the timer and just be able to focus. And so you may want to start with 2 minutes in the beginning and work your way up. But that's just one little thing that you can do. And then when you really need them to focus on something, it does help to just sit right next to them, take that time, slow down, and be present. And it helps them sit focused typically, at least a little bit more.
Yes. I saw an interesting idea that people have done is you can get one of those exercise bands,
Yeah.
loop around the legs of their chair so they can kick it quietly because they've got to get the fidgets out, but they need to be using their hands for their work, but they can be kicking something because they need to move. I was known to be one of those and still leg bouncers where I bounce my leg. And it's funny because even in the car, we're at a stoplight and I'm like, okay, bouncing my leg. And I guess the whole car shakes.
Oh,
And
no.
so my kids are like, Mom, are you bouncing your leg? So it's okay. We all have our different little quirks. And if it helps them to focus while they are moving, that's a little leg thing that you can get energy out. I thought it was a brilliant idea. I probably would have been one of those kids.
That's a great idea because you've seen those ideas where that you bring in an exercise ball or something. Maybe my house isn't big enough to have an exercise ball, or I don't need to be moving furniture all the time or whatever. So that's a nice little workaround. I love that.
And it's
And
hard to write when you're on an exercise ball, but
yeah,
you can write while you're kicking.
yeah.
And those fidget toys can get too distracting. So you almost have to be careful with those. But yeah. So I thought those were fun ideas with the ADHD
I love
to
it.
move with that.
Yeah, those are good.
With autism, that there are often some sensory issues that go with that. And so again, it's knowing your child and what they need and quiet spaces where you don't have to all be together to do schoolwork. They can go to their room, they can put their headphones on, they can make sure they have a quiet space or a comfort item if they do have to be with everybody. Weighted blankets, I know have worked for a lot of people, but also helping maintain schedules and have a rhythm because can't always, life happens, especially as homeschoolers. People think we don't work sometimes. So they think they can interrupt our schedules. I had this a lot with younger kids where people are like, oh, you're home. Yeah, but I'm actually educating my kids and it is a job and they are required to do things. But you may still get some of that, but help them understand that this is the basic rhythm we're going to go with. This is what's required. Early on, I told my kids, the morning is mine, the afternoon is yours. And for some people, it's reversed. Nope, you guys sleep in. I want my morning actually for me, not for education. And
Mhm.
the afternoon becomes the education. But the mornings, my kids owed me their attention and their focus. And in the afternoons, I'm like, okay, fine, go climb a tree.
Yeah. Rhythm's very good. And not necessarily has to be strict.
Right.
Let's do this at this exact time. That's probably not a great idea, actually. But having those guardrails in that within
I
these
like that.
parameters, we've got the freedom to move around. But again, guardrails.
I like that. And there's another idea with sensory, but it also is a vision thing. We actually did this as well for my dyslexic child early, is we took color, not magnifying glass, but just they were colored lenses
Mhm.
that we would put over the text because sometimes some backgrounds made it harder to read. So
Right.
if he took a yellow
Filter, kind of, right?
filter, yeah, yellow filter and put it over that, he could read it better, or blue or red or whatever it was, but also then color coding their work because
Mm.
you can give sometimes the visual reminder help. And always during all of this, we're paying attention to their best times of focus and guarding that time, especially with sensory issues, because if they're tired, it's going to be harder to focus. They're going to feel their clothing more. Their socks are going to be on wrong. Those all different things. So pay attention to where they focus best and are well rested to be able to filter out some of that stuff. And again, sometimes you're dealing with, okay, we cut all the tags out of clothing. We turn socks inside out, whatever it is, so that certain things are not bugging them so they can focus.
Yeah. And it's okay. I've known some families where it's everybody gets up and eats breakfast together at 8 o'clock on the dot. And sometimes it just doesn't work. But you, again, know your own family, know your own kids, but know that it's okay. We joke about it a little bit in homeschool world. Oh, every day is pajama day or whatever. But it really is, if that is the comfort zone, if that helps your child be calm and not distracted or agitated, helps them learn better, it is totally fine. It's perfectly fine if they have one shirt, that's their shirt. They want to wear it every single day. It's okay. Just wash it every once in a while and it'll be fine. So nobody's judging. It's okay to lean into those things.
Do we want to give one more example of input for auditory processing?
Oh, yes.
Those are some who they're actually not hard of hearing because they actually may hear far better than others. They just can't filter out the noises. A dyslexic on a page won't know where needs to focus the eyes. One with auditory processing may be really struggling with all the other noises going around and not knowing where to focus their internal attention. And
Right.
so they can't filter it out. So they're not trying to be rude. They're just trying to figure out, wait, I heard it beeping over here. I heard someone in the background mention a different book, and you're talking to me about math. What am I supposed to listen to? Is that a fire alarm that I should listen to? Is the book I'd rather listen to? And wait, I have to do my math. So they're trying to figure out where to focus. So they're going to need some accommodations on that and patience on that. Again, they're not trying to be rude. They're trying to understand. So you have to help them understand where they need to be focusing their mental attention and their ears at the time. So it's going to be a slower pace because the brain is scrambling the words that are coming and they're having to reorder them sometimes in their brain. So it hasn't heard it in the same order sometimes that you've said it in. They will also need quiet spaces and time between instructions. It's still one thing I think I'm learning, and I have 5 kids and I'm still learning this. But rephrasing the instructions, let them rephrase the instructions to show that they've understood what I've said.
Mm-hmm.
making sure that I don't keep talking. One of my kids was really good of, hey, mom, let me think about it. Okay, quiet. And allowing some quiet to process that kind of stuff. Quiet spaces, quiet between instructions. It helps them if sometimes there is that quiet and it's just a list of homework for the week, not you telling them. And not a surprise of, oh, but we didn't talk about this one. If they have their list of homework on a calendar for what's expected for the week, that will help them. And you can color code that as well. Math is green, English is purple, whatever you need to do, highlight different things to help set things off so that if they're strong visually, it gives their auditory time to catch up.
Yeah, very good. All great ideas. I was thinking what you were saying about rephrasing the instruction, having them tell it back to you. What did you hear me say? And you can really catch some glitches there if you need to. But all of those are such good ideas.
And again, we can't go into all the different styles that your children may be struggling and needing accommodations. So those are examples of how you as a homeschooling mom or dad gets to work with your kid for how they are learning the material. They're still learning the same material that their cohorts would be learning, but they're getting it in the chunks or in the format that is best for them. And doing this, you're also building in your student the ability to advocate for their own needs when they have to interact with the outside world. And they have to deal with a co-op or a club or a sports team. You're helping remind them that they are created beautifully just the way they are with their limitations, because guess what? To be human, to be limited, and we all have different limitations. So you're helping them advocate for themselves and to understand that they are worthy of time and attention, even in their own uniqueness. I think that's just the beauty of homeschooling.
Right.
And for output, we talked about some at the beginning, like conversations is a great style for input and for output, and allowing them opportunities for oral presentations can be fun because you can see the ways maybe they want to show what they've learned, whether it's just speaking, bringing in a visual aid, doing a computer slideshow, whatever it is. Those are good things you can do.
Right. Voice to text apps,
Mhm.
they get older, dictating their answers or they're writing papers for you to write down. Any of those things are fine. I think we wove a lot of these into the input section too. So I think it's okay. The point is to be okay with having different ways to be creative with your accommodations and to work with your specific child.
It's great because you're helping them understand how to share their knowledge, the knowledge they have with those around them. We can't say it enough. Every child is unique and a blessing. Every child has a different way to bless the world. And as their parent, we just have the privilege of helping them discover it. We have the privilege of discovering it in them at the same time. And so I liken it to a treasure hunt. And I think it's a marvelous treasure hunt to find out who your child is. And wow, these might be the ways that they get to bless the world around them.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the conversation and found it insightful. Be sure to check out today's show notes for all applicable links and additional resources. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. Your support helps us continue to bring you great content. Until next time, happy homeschooling.